essentially, it doesn't have to be that cold to get a really good effect. At 20 degrees centigrade, what's that, 68 Fahrenheit, you are getting maximum vasoconstriction. So, all the body, the maximum level of your blood vessels shutting down in response to cold. So at 68, you are showing a really strong physiological effect of the cold.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have Dr. Mark Harper on the line with us, and we're going to talk about a topic that is something I've been preaching for a long time, but he's got a different spin on it, and he's got a lot more information and studies around it. So Dr. Mark Harper, in his new book called Chill, he delivers long-awaited evidence that cold water swimming can, in fact, achieve powerful tangible health benefits, combining science with case studies and stories from the lives of patients. Dr. Harper illuminates the ways in which cold water can impact us physiologically and mentally, alleviating conditions like chronic pain, depression, arthritis, PTSD, anxiety, and migraines. So this is a topic that is a hot topic right now in terms of many people talking about cold plunging and cold showers. But here, Dr. Mark Harper is actually giving us another spin on it. So Dr. Harper, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me along.
Amazing. Well, yeah, let's start with a little bit of backstory. How did you get interested in this work and really studying this topic?
So it kind of comes from two directions. The first is my original area of research, which was stopping people getting cold during surgery, basically.
Interesting.
So if you... this is something we should come on to, really. But yeah, if you get cold, if you actually become hypothermic, it's bad for you. It's always bad for you. And if you get people who have, when you have an anesthetic, you lose temperature control, and the colder you get, the more complications you have, such as infections and more bleeding, needing more transfusions, things like this. So my first sort of part of my research career was to do with this, and that's what my PhD is in. But then, as part of this, I sort of started coming across papers about the effect of cold immersion, and what happens. Even more interesting was what happens when you immerse yourself regularly in water and you become adapted to it. Because one of the key things that an anesthesiologist does is try and reduce the stress response to surgery, because it's a really stressful thing. And while a stress is good, you don't want too much of it. And what happens when you have an operation, you might not remember it. It's not a stressful experience mentally necessarily, but physically your body is still feeling it pretty much as if you were wide awake. So we aim to reduce that stress response to good levels, to physiological levels, rather than being up in the pathological zone. And what I saw with the cold adaptation is that cold is a stress, going to cold water is a stress. And you get this stress response, which pretty much unsurprisingly is the same as the stress response to surgery. You're only going to have, the body's only going to evolve one kind of stress response. But what was even better is as you adapt to it, this stress response is attenuated and bringing it down to those more physiological levels. So my first idea was that, okay, if we can adapt to stress, bring those stress levels down, maybe I could use it for my patients before an operation and they'd have less complications. Sadly, it's not a study I've managed to do in the meantime, but it's I do think there's a really good theoretical basis to it. But then the other part, so that's one direction I came from. The other direction was through starting swimming in the sea myself. Now, I got into it almost randomly. I've just been a pool swimmer all my life, but the pool was shut for a couple of weeks. An old friend of mine said, "Oh, join the sea swimmers for a couple of weeks," when I was complaining about this. And, I was shocked as anyone to realize they did it all year round, every day. But anyway, the first time I did it, I still remember walking up the beach afterwards. And, it was the middle of summer. So, we're talking about 68 Fahrenheit in the water, not cold at all. But I remember feeling so good. And this was really surprising to me. And then a few years later, I read how a lot of depression is associated with inflammation. And knowing at that point how I felt good, not even being depressed coming out of the water, how cold water swimming could reduce inflammation. This is a big part of the stress response, is an excess inflammatory response. Again, you need inflammation, but you don't want too much of it. I thought, well, maybe we could use cold water swimming to treat depression. And that's kind of how I ended up starting to research this area.
That's incredible. That is a really incredible story. And I can tell you, just by doing cold showers, when I started doing cold showers, and now I personally, I'll do a nice warm shower, but then I'll finish it as cold as it can go for the last, 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes. And now I'm really addicted to that feeling. Like, people search out supplements that are nootropics that help give them, mentally stimulation. And for me, there's no better nootropic than, getting in cold water immersion. I'm sure the ocean is even better. I know with the ocean, you also have different minerals and grounding and magnesium and other things, as well as the cold. But we've known for a long time, right? And I always say on this podcast that health is about lowering inflammation in the body. We know for a long time, right? If you, back to as simple as if you sprain your ankle or something, you're going to put ice on it to reduce the swelling. So we know, that cold can reduce inflammation, but it also, I certainly can feel the mental benefits. And now if I take a shower, I have to finish on cold the last few minutes. Otherwise, I just don't feel my same natural, high energy, mentally stimulated self.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because that first week, maybe even that first day, one of the older guys in the arch, David, who I write about in the book actually, he said to me, "Oh, you're going to get addicted to the cold," and he's kind of right, but he's because I still hate the feeling of going in the water, but just like you, I get out, I have so much energy, I don't know how I'm going to get through the day if the waves are too big, if it's too rough to get in. It's like, oh my God, how am I going to survive the day without any energy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really something special. And it is still, even every time when I'm taking a shower, I still get to that point where I'm like, should I skip it today? I don't really feel like it. But then I'm always like, no, come on. You know how you're going to feel after if you don't do it. You're going to feel all overheated and lazy compared to your normal high energy self. So I always do it. And then I'm happy that I did do it. But yeah, tell us a little bit more then. So some people have heard of cold showers, and we've kind of recommended in the past, people could start off with as little as 30 seconds and then kind of work their way up to at least 2-3 minutes. Ideally at least 2 minutes of cold. And then obviously now there's all the craze about cold plunges. But you prefer, swimming in the ocean, right? That's your number one choice?
Yeah, or anywhere outdoors in nature. I mean, the ocean works for me because, I live half the year in Norway and I have a view over the sea. I live half the year in the UK. I have a view over the sea. It's
nice.
It's convenient, and I do love having the waves. The constantly changing nature of the ocean is just endlessly fascinating. But anywhere outdoors. I also swim a lot in Norway. I'm in Norway. There's a lake just by the hospital where I work, and most mornings, certainly for when it's not frozen over, I'll go for a swim in that before work. So, it's really about being outdoors, and I think there are a couple of things with that. First is, it's nature. It's just wonderful being out there. You can do it with other people, which is, I always prefer to do. But on top of that, I suppose you get the exercise as well. But also, I think there's something about it. When you do it outdoors with other people in beautiful surroundings, or even not so beautiful surroundings, you keep coming back. It's something that keeps you coming back, something that keeps you doing it. And it's like any diet. The diet that works is the one you can stick at. And and this is an activity, the exercise. You can do any kind of exercise. You can do meditation. You can do breathing. These are all great things for your body and your mind. But what you need is something that will keep you going back. And it's that outdoors bit, which I think keeps me going back. the thought of getting into plunging myself into a bucket of, well, a large bucket bin of ice cold water, I just get no pleasure thinking about that. And I hate cold showers still. After 20 years of doing this, can't bear a cold shower. But I'll put myself in next to freezing water.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I live in the desert, so I don't have an ocean right here. But when I do travel to the West Coast or even the East Coast, where I can get in some cold water, that's always nice. So why is it that cold immersion, do you think, has all these benefits, such as potentially helping with depression, potentially lowering inflammation, and helping with people who have pain? What do you think are some of the mechanisms there?
I think the main mechanism behind it, and it's sort of a bit more subtle and a bit more complex than this, but the main mechanism is through a reduction in inflammation, but it's also through, the high you get. It's kind of almost counterintuitive, because you get this real high, you get this real buzz, your body is stressed, but then afterwards all these levels go down, and what you find is that the peak levels of your stress response go down. So you're still getting a stress response from this, but what happens is your peak levels to that stress and to any other stress, because there are studies that show cross adaptation. So adapting to cold can mean you cope with stress. I mean, the classic study is one where they were putting people on an exercise bike in a hypoxic environment. So the oxygen level was 12% as opposed to 21%. And those who did the cold adaptation course at the end of it performed better than those who hadn't done the course. So we know that adaptation carries into other stresses. So that's it. And also, but you're also getting this buzz at the same time, which is adrenaline and noradrenaline and things like this, dopamine and whatever you want. I mean, but it's whatever it comes from, it's just a real buzz. And so that is a high. So it's reducing your lows with the reduction in inflammation, because that's the thing that really gets you there. And it's giving you a high as well. I mean, it sounds contradictory, but that is what is happening. Yep.
And what kind of temperature are you typically? I know it obviously will be different depending on the time of the year, but what's your ideal, I guess, temperature? And is there a temperature that's too cold for you? I don't know how cold it gets there in where you're at.
Well, so the ideal temperature, there are two very different questions, aren't they? So essentially, it doesn't have to be that cold to get a really good effect. At 20 degrees centigrade, what's that, 68 Fahrenheit, you are getting maximum vasoconstriction. So, all the body, the maximum level of your blood vessels shutting down in response to cold. So at 68, you are showing a really strong physiological effect of the cold. So anything below that temperature is going to have a really good effect. And, certainly I feel it. If the temperature occasionally goes a bit above that in the summer, and, I love it. It's still fantastic, but I don't get the same buzz. And that buzz increases as it goes colder. They say, in terms of adapting to the cold, the maximum adaptation levels between 10 and 15 degrees centigrade. So, again, not that cold, and most of the courses we've run, so the ones we've run for our studies, they're in the ocean in the UK, and they're going to be running somewhere between, 55, 68, 50, 55, 68 degrees. It's not really that cold. In terms of how cold can you go, I have actually once in Norway, I've trailed the thermometer into the water and aside, and it came out, the temperature actually read minus 0.2 degrees centigrade. So I will go down, but won't stay in very long. But, you can get into water, salt water, because when it's below freezing, and it seems fine. I don't really notice a big difference below 5 degrees. It's just really, really cold.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good to know. Even under 68 degrees Fahrenheit, you're still getting a lot of these benefits. Because I know, with this cold plunging craze that's going on now, it's, I was recently with a kind of a bunch of guys, a little kind of men's group thing. And one of the guys brought the cold plunge. And then all of a sudden it became a competition of how low can we go, and next thing you know, it was, 30, I forget what it is, 32 degrees or 34 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. And that one was certainly a little bit more of a flight or fight kind of response in me, especially because it's important. I think it's important for people to know also that you don't want to be getting in this cold, whether it's a cold shower, cold plunge, or the ocean, and be like, oh my gosh, and like breathing. Like I don't know. Maybe would you agree? It's important to control your breathing.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that it is important to control your breathing, and you're not going to get any more benefit from when you're below about 50, 55. So there's no benefit from that, and there's definitely no benefit from staying in for a long time, because the longer you stay in, the more risk you have of hypothermia, and once you start becoming hypothermic, you get the bad effects. So you just want to get those good effects, which is that first 2 or 3 minutes. But with the breathing, so when you first start doing cold swimming or ice buckets or whatever you're going to do, then the body's natural response is to hyperventilate. It's to take a big breath in, and it's to hyperventilate. And it's this response which kills people, certainly by the ocean or wherever you dive into cold water and you're not used to it and your head goes straight under. Then you're immediately going to have to take a big deep breath in, and you're going to hyperventilate, and that fills your lungs full of water, which is a really bad idea, and that's why people drown. It's not because of a high blood pressure and heart attacks; it's because of this effect on the breathing in the vast majority of cases. So yes, I think it is important, but it's also important to control your breath. It's good to do it because when you are hyperventilating like that, it's like a panic attack. And that's what it is when you sort of get into the cold water for the first time. Your body is panicking. It's a fight. It's a massive fight-flight response. And that's not what we want. What we want is, better breathing, as it were. We need parasympathetic breathing, and that's what you get. It doesn't have to be that cold to get the benefit. So why not do a temperature where you can control your breathing?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I agree. I think around the 52 degrees, that kind of temperature seems to me much, much better in terms of being able to, be in the parasympathetic state, controlling your breathing more, not be like hyperventilating compared to going really, really low. I think people are starting to overdo it and almost making it a competition. And yeah, I noticed a big difference there. So you did mention something, and it's probably a good idea to clarify this for people. How long, you mentioned 2 or 3 minutes. I know maybe that's only with the very, very low temperature. I assume when you're going for a swim in the ocean, if it's 55 degrees or 60 degrees, I assume you're spending more than just 2 or 3 minutes in there, or are you capping it at a certain time? What do you think is a good time frame for people?
I mean, it depends. I think this is the thing. There's this thing that you do 1 degree per minute. If you use centigrade, it's 1 degree per minute. Anything that fixes a number is wrong. In this respect, everyone is different every single day. It's depending on how much sleep you've had, whether you're a bit unwell, whether you've had a drink the night before. You're different every day, and it's a matter of feeling how you feel inside and going with that. So yes, when it's above 10 degrees, essentially above 10, above about 50, 55, then I can swim properly. I'll go for a nice swim, and who knows, it might be a longer swim, might be a shorter swim. I'll be out there. I still think you get that benefit in the first few minutes, though. It's not necessary. It's a bit of exercise, which is beautiful because I like doing it. Below about that temperature, yes, you want to be in the water less time. And I think we've already talked about breathing. That's a really important thing because, as I'm sure you're aware, you get into the water and it's like, I still have this. I have 20 years. I still get in. It's like, it really feels, it has you feel the shock, the stress, but then very quickly afterwards, minute, 2 minutes afterwards, that passes. You can start start looking around, enjoying the sensation and things like that. So if you've been in long enough for your breathing to come under control, then you've been in long enough to get you've got most of the benefits, maybe 80% of the benefits already.
Yeah. And also, I think there's a difference when you're actually swimming and moving. You're probably warming yourself up a little bit more rather than when you're just going into like an ice bucket and not moving at all as well. So probably people who are going in cold plunges, might really want to consider, how long they're going in for. And so, I think probably a minimum of 2 minutes but probably, again, there was one time a few years back, I'm ashamed to admit, we also, again, had a little competition of who could stay in the longest. And that didn't end up well either. I ended up getting sick after that, and it was just it was so stupid. But at the time, we didn't, in my defense, we didn't have much information about cold plunging and stuff. It was very, very new at that time, and just a bunch of guys having a competition. So so I think it's important for people to realize that. Now, I want to transition a little bit. I know in your book you have you talk about different case studies and examples of people that have gotten benefits from swimming in the ocean, from cold immersion. Can you share maybe any examples or case studies there? Yeah,
I think there are a few. I mean, there's like David, who's the guy who told me I'd become addicted to the cold. I think his grandfather was one of the first members of Brighton Swimming Club, which is the oldest swimming club in the UK, for example. But anyway, so he suffers from terrible arthritis, really, really bad arthritis. And, after, if he doesn't get his swim, he is confined to a chair and taking opioids. And he has been for years. He's tried to come off the opioids. It just doesn't work. He's a highly motivated guy. And, he comes in. So he sort of comes down to the sea on his crutches. He goes into the water. And in the summer, he's made this bamboo rod, which he's got his bamboo rod. He puts some mackerel hooks on it, and he swims with his fins. He goes out catching fish, catching mackerel and stuff round the pier. It's remarkable.
Wow.
He's such a great guy. But then there's also, say, Rob, who's a friend of mine. So I knew him quite well before I wrote the book, but I knew that he'd been using it for his Crohn's disease. So it's inflammatory bowel disease, another condition associated with inflammation. But I didn't realize the extent to how bad it was. So when he was in his 20s, he was so ill with this that he couldn't walk up the steps to his parents' house. Just a few steps at the front of their house. Then he actually decided to do swimming, not for his Crohn's. So this was a while ago before it became more fashionable, and he just wanted to swim the channel for charity, the English Channel for charity. And he started swimming in the sea, and he noticed, and he was on industrial doses of steroids, not anabolic steroids, the really nasty ones. And he noticed his Crohn's was getting better. And he sort of flipped in and out the sea and thought, actually, this is working. And it comes back when I stop swimming and whatever. And basically stopped taking his steroids, and he hasn't been taking them now probably for about 10 years. And then last year, this guy who couldn't walk up the steps to his parents' house in his 20s, now in his mid-50s, he did a triathlon every week for the whole year, so 52 triathlons.
Wow. Incredible. And he credits a lot of that to doing cold water immersion, swimming in the ocean almost every day.
Yeah, I mean, almost entirely. And it was because he and this is the interesting thing. We see this with a lot of cases, is that people come to it for a different reason, and then they notice that their symptoms of another condition are getting better. So he didn't come into it specifically for that. He wasn't looking for that effect, yet it happened. So I think it's reasonable to credit it to the cold swimming. And of course, condition worsens when he doesn't get a swim.
Right. Yeah. And I know someone as well, also lives in the desert, but every time he would play soccer, he'd be sore for 2 days after. And now, as soon as after his games are over, immediately going in a cold plunge and has noticed a dramatic difference in his recovery. So there's certainly something there. And athletes have known this for years, right? With getting in ice baths and things like that after the game for recovery. So yeah, certainly there's a lot to that. What would you say to people who are considering it, but right now they're thinking, oh, I don't know, it's too cold, or I don't see myself doing that. You know, there's so many people I tell about even just taking a cold shower, and they're just like, oh, I don't think I can do that. I don't have it in me, kind of a thing. What would you say to them?
I would say start easy. So the cold shower is a good way of starting. Yeah, certainly if you want to swim in the ocean or swim outdoors, start not that cold. Start with a water of about 68. And that's fine. You're going to get the benefits from that. But so in the UK, that's the summer temperature of the water. So I tend to tell people, start in the summer and then do it. The other thing is that the second time's always the worst. So, because the first time you're all set up for it, you're psyched up, you go in, you get through it. It's like, yes, I've done it. But then the second time, you thought that was all right last time, and you go in and you're still not adapted. Your body isn't used to it yet. And so so that's the worst. And then it's about the third time or fourth time that you start really, you'll still get a good high afterwards, but the third or fourth time you can start really enjoying it. And so the other thing I would say is, look, stick with it. Do it 6 times, because 6 is the classic adaptation protocol we use in physiological studies for cold adaptation. Do it 6 times. If it's still not for you, it's not for you.
Mm-hmm. What kind of studies have you done, or do you maybe share in your book?
I think the main thrust of the studies that we've done, really, kind of innovative studies that we've done are on mental health. So this all started out. So, I had this idea that you could treat depression, with cold water swimming. And then a few weeks later, I happened to meet this guy called Mike Tipton, who's a professor of extreme physiology in the south of England. And he was the guy whose papers I'd been reading, which gave me the idea, if you see what I mean. So he's a physiologist. And so he had done all that work. And so I gave him, I spoke to him. I said, look, this is my theory. And he said, oh, that's quite interesting, because he's always looking for a practical angle for his research. And then a few weeks after that, he was contacted by this TV doctor, a very famous TV doctor over here, Chris Van Tilliken, who was starting up a program called The Doctor Who Gave Up Drugs. And this is all about doing different, treating illnesses without medicines. And he said, well, what can we do with cold water swimming? And Mike said, I just happened to have met this guy who has an idea about using it for depression. So anyway, the BBC found a young lady who wanted to come off her antidepressants. And to cut a long story short, we took her along, adapted to the cold over the course of 2 days, basically, took her for a swim, and then Chris followed her up. And within a few months, she was off her medication. And several years later, when our book was published, I got in contact with her, sent her a copy of the book, still off the medication. And so that was the first one. We wrote that up. So that was a case study. But you can't just do it on one thing. Well, actually, I said to Chris, when we were doing this, I said, what happens if it doesn't work? Then my whole theory's gone. All my research, my future research that I've planned isn't going to happen. He says, don't worry, it always works on TV. And he was right. So anyway, so the next stage was to take it out into real life. So we did a study. It was just a single-arm study where we took 59 people with anxiety and depression, gave them an 8-week course swimming in the ocean just off the south coast of the UK, and looked at their scores. And the results we got, obviously I hoped it would be something good, but the results, it was a medicine, people wouldn't believe you if you had the results we had. Depending how you looked at it, 60 to 80% were going from clinical anxiety and or depression to no clinical anxiety and or depression. So, that was, that's the first time that cold water swimming has been used as a treatment. So that was really exciting study. We just finished a study called Outside, which is the first stage, a feasibility stage of a randomized control trial using cold water swimming for depression. And although the results haven't been published yet, what I can say is that we've been awarded the money to do the full-scale trial of over 400 people, £750,000, what's that, $1 million, to do the full-scale study, randomized control trial for this. And so, we should be beginning to recruit next year and run it over 2 years. So we might have some answers in about 3 years' time, but, really innovative answers. So, definitive answers, sorry.
That's incredible. Wow, that is incredible. So in this study, the recent one that you said the results are not published yet, but what exactly was it like a placebo? Was there like a placebo group, or was it just basically everyone had an issue and they went through and then measured results?
Yeah. So the way it worked was that you were randomized. You came in, recruited. You were randomized either to a swimming course or normal treatment.
Got it.
So you just carried on with what you would normally get for your condition. And the guys who had the swimming course, So, and then, but I was a particularly genius idea, I thought, not mine, I hasten to add, was that the guys who weren't in the treatment arm, the control group, they all got a swimming course at the end of the thing. Unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to follow them up, but that would have been fascinating to see, if they then benefited from it.
Nice. That's very, very cool. Love this. I love these studies, and I love the idea of the guy who wants to do doctors without drugs and find all the alternative ways without drugs. Maybe kind of a little bit off topic, just out of curiosity there. Were there any other methodologies that you or he have found that, were kind of had better, as good as or better results than drugs that were any kind of natural ways?
Well, the one I really remember from his program, because I was only involved in the cold water swimming thing, but the one which I thought was even more remarkable in a way was this woman who was on so many painkillers, really stiff, hardly moved, couldn't get around the place. And for her, he took a sort of a Tai Chi movement type thing. I think it moved up. I can't remember. It was some kind of martial arts thing, which started off very gently, but a martial arts kind of movement exercises. And, after a few weeks, few months, she was just moving normally. It was just incredible. Nice.
Amazing. Anything else? I know before we wrap up here, anything else people should know about your book, Chill, the Cold Water Swim Cure, or any of the work that you're doing?
I think that the key thing for me is these studies. If anyone in the UK who feels they could benefit from it, get in touch with. I think you can. I think you can certainly look up Outside. Not sure if you can look up Outside too, but be on the website. We want people to come and join us and have a swimming course. I think if there's one message I'd like to get across. I've got these 6 rules for swimming outside. Do it safely, basically. But then I sort of kind of condensed them down to sort of 3 rules, which is not that long, so only a matter of minutes, not that cold, under 68, and not that often. All our studies, we've had these studies that they've just been swimming once a week, and it's having a clinical effect doing it once a week. So you don't have to. It doesn't have to be that big a commitment. And then actually, I went on and I've condensed that even further. And this is where I find a bit of a problem with the the kind of this thing of going through the pain, and it's about lasting out the pain and going for longer and longer, is that it does have problems. And what that really misses out on is it should be fun. It's not a matter of making it painful or a challenge. It doesn't have to be. You can get all those benefits. So I say minimize discomfort. So wear gloves and shoes when it's really cold. It's going to make no difference. Put a hat on your head. And so minimize discomfort and maximize fun. It just go out there and have fun with it.
Love it. Love it. Well, Dr. Harper, your book is called Chill, the Cold Water Swim Cure. Is that available basically everywhere books are sold, Amazon and all that, or should they go to a specific website?
Yeah, no, available everywhere from Chronicle Prison Books in the US.
Amazing, amazing. And where else can people follow you if they want to, are you on any social media or anywhere else people can learn more? Yeah,
I basically do a bit of Instagramming, not much, but fun photos. And when we have new and interesting research things, I put it out there, and that's at the Wild Swim Doctor.
At the World Swim Doctor.
The Wild Swim Doctor.
Oh, at the Wild Swim Doctor. Nice, very cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for writing this book and for doing these amazing studies. I think the world needs a lot more of these studies and ways to help people without medicine. I think is just phenomenal. And this is obviously something that people are seeing incredible results with. I've been a fan for a long time. I wish I had an ocean right next to me, but I'll make do with what I can. And also pretty incredible to hear that people are getting great results with only once a week. Even that's pretty incredible. I would have thought that they were doing it every day in these studies. So that's pretty great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, me too. It was a great conversation.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic vegan and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.